empires fall, so do emperors.
This is war! Real war! Ready to round!
Gladiator 2 is the latest swords and sandals action flick to hit theaters. It's directed by Ridley Scott, and it is of course a sequel follow-up to Gladiator, a film that came out in the year 2000. That film was also directed by Ridley Scott, and it starred Russell Crowe as Maximus, a gladiator who would defy an emperor, and that emperor was played by Joaquin Phoenix. And of course, at the end of that film, both of those men met their ultimate demise at each other's hands, and so 24 years later, we are getting a sequel to that incredible film. But where were they going to go with it? Well, there was a little boy in that first film named Lucius, and in this film, Lucius has grown into a strong man and played by Paul Mescal. And in this film, Lucius has fled the Roman Empire to evade being killed for the throne, and he's living secluded with another group of people. However, that is where our story begins, because even though Lucius is living in a faraway land, in a place where he thinks the Roman Empire can't reach, well, the Roman Empire is extending its empire, and they have sent ships helmed by Pedro Pascal's character of Marcus Acacius, and he is the general of the Roman army, and they are going to take as much land as they can. So there's an awesome battle at the beginning of the film, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and one thing leads to another. Lucius gets captured, and he gets sold to Denzel Washington's character of Macrinus, who buys and sells gladiators. So even though Lucius did everything he could, and Lucius's mother, played by Connie Nielsen, also did everything she could to keep Lucius away from the Empire, we find him once again on the grandest stage of them all, the Gladiator Stadium, fighting for his life and fighting for the pleasure of the evil twin emperors. Now, that's the best setup that I can give you for this film. If that sounds interesting, the film is playing in theaters now. I would highly recommend watching this on the biggest screen possible. I watched it on an IMAX screen, and I was not disappointed. With that said, let's get into my positives and some of my negatives. My first positive has to be the action in this film, whether it's a war battle that sort of bookends both sides of this film, or it's the gladiator scenes themselves. All of them worked for me, and I think they worked just about as good as they did in the first movie. Of course, in that first movie, you have the chariot scene, you have the scene with the tigers. There's some great scenes in that original Gladiator film, but in this film, I think they try and go bigger and better, because that's what a sequel is supposed to do. It's supposed to take what worked from the first film and do it better, if possible. Now, I'm not saying that these scenes are necessarily better, but I had a damn good time with them. There's a scene with the giant rhino that was a lot of fun, and there's my favorite scene in this movie, which involves a battle at sea within the Gladiator Stadium. They fill it with water, they put sharks in the water, and then they have boats, and they have to fight on these boats, and if you fall off, you might not be dead, but you will be soon, because there's sharks in the water. Is it improbable? Maybe, but I had a good time with it. And since we're talking about the CGI sharks and how the movie looked, let's go on to my next positive, which would be the cinematography of this film and the CGI. I thought it looked flawless. Now, here's the thing. I've heard people say, oh, I don't think the sharks looked great, but I think those people are the same ones saying that it defied logic. I think those things are very different. If you can just be like, okay, I'm going to let it defy logic, I think you can really enjoy those scenes, and I think they looked great. I saw this on an IMAX screen, and I didn't see anything that was unpleasing to the eyes. I thought the different shots in this film looked beautiful. There's also just some really cool shots in this movie, like one where at the beginning Lucius is grabbing a bunch of feed for his animals, and he's sort of going through his hands like his dad Maximus did before him with the sand. And it's just a really beautiful scene when you see those seeds and those oats hit his hand. There's something beautiful about it that I really enjoyed. Just a little attention to detail that went a long way. My next positive has to be the acting in this film from the lead characters. I thought they all did such a fantastic job. Paul Mescal does a great job being Lucius, sort of showing that emotion throughout this film, the blind rage throughout this film, his need for vengeance throughout this film. And then you've got Pedro Pascal, who at the beginning, you want to see him dead. But throughout the film, they do a great job with his character and making you, the viewer, sympathetic towards him and not wanting to see Lucius get revenge on his character. And I thought he did a good job with that. But while both of their performances were great, the best performance in this movie by far is Denzel Washington as Macrinus, because he's a snake in the grass that you absolutely love to hate. You start this movie with, okay, this guy bought Lucius, they're going to have a good back and forth together, and they do seem to have a good back and forth together. But as the movie progresses, as things go on, you start to hate him more and more. You start realizing what a snake he is, how he's got an alternate agenda against not just the emperors, not just the gladiators, but the entire Roman Empire. And you watch as he tries to make the entire thing topple. I don't think we could have gotten as great a performance as we did through Denzel Washington. I thought he was perfect casting for this, and I loved every second of him being on screen. It's the one thing that makes me want to rewatch this movie the most, is just getting to watch Denzel on this screen. It's his best work in years. Of course, that's just my opinion. That'll lead me to my final positive of this film, which is something they did right at the beginning of this movie. So at the beginning of the movie, you have a siege on Lucius and his people from the Roman Empire. And I remember in the original Gladiator film how you see the same sort of thing happen, where Rome is extending its empire, it's taking out these rebels, or it's taking out these people. You've got Russell Crowe on one side with his army taking these people out, slaughtering them, but you're with them because Russell Crowe is the gladiator. He's the guy you're there to see, and so you want them to win this battle. But where my positive comes in is that in this movie you have the same sort of opening where you have Rome extending its empire yet again, and it's going after these rebels or these people that they believe should belong under the Roman Empire, but you see it from their point of view versus the Roman Empire's point of view. So even though you like Pedro Pascal, you don't want him and his people to win, and it's a complete reversal from that first film. And that scene, that moment, that opening scene, that battle brought me into this movie because I knew immediately it was something different. This movie had a different story to tell. It wasn't just going to be, oh, guy is a gladiator, he gets screwed over, he wants vengeance on the empire. No, this movie had more to tell, and I thought that set up the story for this film so damn well. It was just cool seeing it from the other side. Instead of, oh, well, we just want the Roman Empire to win, we want them to win, we want them to succeed. No, instead in this movie, it's like, well, you've got the Roman Empire, but they're the bad guys this time. I thought it was filmed from a great perspective of you actually being against the Roman Empire this time around. That'll lead me over to my negatives. My first negative is that there's a lot going on in this film, and while I think there's something to enjoy about everything going on in this film, that almost drags this movie down in the second act because they have so much setup to do in such a short time. Like the third act of this movie, I wouldn't change a thing. I liked everything that happened. I thought it finalized everything really well. So I'm not dragging down the third act, but the second act of this film really had to pull together all of the different chess pieces, whether it was Marcus Acacius trying to save Rome the best way he knew possible, or Lucius on a quest for vengeance against Marcus, or Lucius's mother Lucilla, who was trying to keep peace between them but also try and save Rome, or you had Macrinus in the background sort of being a snake and scheming. I loved what he did, but it was just another piece of this. Then you've got twin emperors who are sort of going crazy with each other and getting angrier and angrier with each other, and there was so much packed into this, plus a ton of other little things like a doctor at one point. You've got other Senate members who are scheming. There was just a lot to pack into that second act, where it felt like the second act took forever to get to its point because they had to align all these chess pieces perfectly. And again, I think they did. I think the third act goes off really well, and I think they do a good job with closing this movie out and this franchise out completely. But in that second act, there was just way too much going on. My other negative is sort of adjacent to my first negative, where I thought the story was being dragged down. Because there was so much going on, my other negative is that Lucius's revenge story sort of gets lost in the shuffle. Yes, they do kind of come full circle by that third act, but throughout the film, you should be feeling his pain. But I didn't really feel his pain because there was so much going on. I felt like his story just kind of get lost. It was like, oh yeah, he's one of the gladiators. Yeah, he's out in the stadium fighting. I'm not saying the movie doesn't center around him. It's called Gladiator 2. It is about Lucius's return to Rome and return to power ultimately, but I feel like it's a situation where you have Lucius should be front and center for the whole thing, but because they had so much going on, his story seems to get lost for a big chunk of this film. That's not to say it's a bad film though. Overall, I would highly recommend this movie to everyone. If you're just a movie fan, I think it's a very competently made film by Ridley Scott. If you're a big fan of the first movie, I think you'll be impressed by this film. If you're a big fan of sword and sandals action films, I think you'll also be impressed by this film. If you're in none of those camps, maybe wait for it, but otherwise, I would recommend it on the biggest screen possible. But those are just my opinions because that's my review for Gladiator 2. Guys, if you had a chance to see this yet, if you have, let me know in the comment section down below. Maybe we agree or disagree. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the film as well. And finally, guys, if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and it helps me right here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Alright guys, we got to the end of my Gladiator 2 movie review. Loved watching this movie in theaters, loved making this review. It's a little late, but I've had a cold. You could probably hear it in my voice still. But also, I redid my entire basement while I was not feeling great. So I got something done in the process. I hope you like the new view. This is the view for the foreseeable future. I don't know how much more I could actually do down here. So all I did, I added some shelves. Because I used to just have those shelves back there, and then got rid of the old desk, put in a new desk over here. Looks a lot better. So maybe I'll share a picture of what it looks like on this side. But with that said, if you like this and you want to check out other content, well, I've got all of my best and worst of 2024 right there, and I've got all of my 2024 movie reviews right there.